Well, hello, and welcome to Richard and Mike Do Food.
Hello, everybody.
And producer Dave is here.
Hello.
With us as always. Well, obviously, we're doing Richard and Mike Do Food today, but we've got a bit of an announcement, haven't we?
You could call it sad news, or you could call it good news.
Or neutral news.
Just news.
Just news. And that we kind of think we should change the name of the podcast, guys, to Richard and Mike Do Faith.
Yeah.
On the basis that really is what it is. It's not really about food at all, as we've alluded to in the past. So yeah, looking for, cheers to a new era of Richard and Mike Do Faith rather than Richard and Mike. We will still eat food.
There will always be food
in the podcast, or some form of sustenance of some description. So that's exciting, I guess.
Yes, more accurate.
More accurate, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a better way of putting it. Yeah, maybe not so exciting, but certainly a change.
It's a change.
Yeah. So what food have we got today, Rich? Because you made this.
I did. So
I'm excited to see what it is because you were messaging earlier. Can you eat this? Is there any allergens from this? And I was like, what on earth is he going to make from those ingredients that we're going to eat tonight? So I was very anticipating what this could possibly be.
So on YouTube, it was called cucumber noodles. I think it came up on a YouTube short or something. And I just tried it. It's basically cucumbers with vinegar and sesame oil. There's a few other things, but it's one of the things that my kids like. So it's a way we can actually get through a whole cucumber quite quickly.
Wow.
Yeah. Let's give it a try then, shall we?
It smells great. It's got a kind of sesame scent to it. Oh, I love the smell of sesame seeds and oil and things. That is good. That's spicy as well. That's really nice.
It works, doesn't it?
Richard Hilton, that is a triumph.
Thank you. We've got a nice picture of you to put on Instagram, Mike.
Yeah, you have. You went into full photographer mode, didn't you, when you were taking that one?
I did. A lot of direction.
It was a lot of direction. A lot of third-person instruction direction. I think that's what we might.
Do you want to just try?
Shall we just... Let's... It was very disconcerting for me, but very fabulous nonetheless.
I'm impressed that I'm managing with the chopsticks. Normally with chopsticks I try for a bit, then just give up.
You look like you're fairly comfortable there.
Comfortable I wouldn't say is the right word.
Well, the illusion at least is there from where I'm sitting. I've never used metal chopsticks before.
Are they more painful?
More painful. I don't generally find chopsticks painful, but...
You're using them in the wrong way,
Yeah.
100%. 100% I'm using them in the wrong way. It shouldn't hurt to use chopsticks, should it? So do you also find, while we're talking about me using chopsticks wrong, do you ever find that you get a cramp using them as well?
Yeah, I do occasionally.
Yeah.
Okay.
So our theme today is friendship.
Yes.
So we wanted to talk a bit about friendship today. This is one we've been kind of, I guess, thinking about and playing around with for a little while. And yeah, kind of looking forward to talking about it really. It's a really interesting theme, quite a wide-ranging and wide-reaching one, and I think lots of people would have very different thoughts and ideas about what friendship is and how you, care for your friends and that kind of stuff. So we're obviously not looking to cover everything and be, all-encompassing with it, but just to give kind of a little bit of our perspective as usual on the thing really, and some maybe thoughts that have been mulling around for a while.
Yeah, we're not scholars, we're just people who like to talk about this stuff, and part of it is that through talking about it we kind of digest it, we start to understand it a bit better.
Yeah, and it was for us kind of hanging out and being friends that we kind of got the idea to, I guess, do this whole thing, because it's just, it's the kind of stuff we'd chat about in the pub, I guess, or wherever we were.
So like when you look at the Bible, it doesn't actually cover friendship that much. I think that's not because friendship isn't a thing, but I think it's partly because there's just so much that it does cover that those kind of nuances aren't so well engaged. The best examples would be David and Jonathan in the Old Testament.
Right.
Where it talks about their closeness and the way that they supported one another, and to the point that when David was king, he was even looking for ways to bless Jonathan's relatives.
Yeah, and I guess the context of that is Jonathan was Saul's son.
Saul who was
And
trying to kill
Saul
him.
was the guy hunting him down essentially because David was in line for the throne and Saul saw him as a threat. So there was a lot of tension there for Jonathan, wasn't there, in the whole thing as well. So that kind of obviously put the relationship under a lot of strain. But it still existed, the relationship and the friendship still continued, and through all of that challenge, which I suppose is one example that we can draw out from it.
Yeah, so friendship's under fire, really, isn't it? And
Yeah.
continuing. Because that must have been really tough for Jonathan, because it's not as if it was just two people, two friends, but actually it's his dad and his friend. And his dad was in the wrong, wasn't he?
Yeah, for the most part, yeah.
Just the most part.
Yeah. And he was still king.
He was,
as
yeah,
well. So,
yeah.
And you notice Jonathan kind of balancing that relationship with his dad and the fact his dad was king and needed to behave in a certain way towards him and respond in a certain way towards him at the same time, honouring that friendship with David.
It's definitely worth a read, that part of the Bible, isn't it? We'll have to find out what those verses are. 2 Samuel, somewhere around there.
Sounds about right.
And like one of the things that really stood out was kind of like, it was ultimately the whole idea of love, wasn't it? And the Bible talks about love, but actually in the original translations there were multiple types of love. So you had eros, which is the romantic or passionate love; philia, which is what we're seeing here, which would be your kind of deep friendship. Is it storge? How you pronounce it?
I have no idea. Yeah, that looks right. Storge. Some people will think it's storge.
Storge maybe, and that's your kind of family love. And then you've got the ultimate love, which is agape, which is what Jesus demonstrated, which is being willing to lay your life down for someone. It's unconditional love.
That's a love that doesn't expect anything in return, isn't it?
Yes.
That's that one. Yeah. Whereas I think the others, in some way or other, do.
Like
It's
they
not
expect
necessarily a
you
negative
to,
thing. It's not like, I'll only give you this love if you, but like, they're just the nature of that is such that there's a reciprocation of some degree. Yeah.
Exactly that. And we were talking, and I was saying how I felt quite challenged because, like in the past, people had spoken about how you can love people and they come to know God, that kind of stuff, like through your friends and stuff. And I'd had a few friends who were really experiencing God, and they weren't Christians, and that's quite exciting. I thought, I felt challenged by God, him saying something along the lines of, Richard, if these people turned around and said they didn't want anything to do with me, what would your response be? How would you feel about them? And I thought, oh gosh, that's really interesting, because I think you can get into a place where you're basically loving people with the intention that they can give their life to God. And yes, we want people to give their lives to God, but when you love people and that's kind of a condition on it, which is what I think I've witnessed that before.
You get the little phrase or soundbite was loving people into the kingdom.
Yes.
Or, there's various other different phrases that people use to kind of communicate the idea of, well, if you care for people enough, you show them how much Jesus loves them, and therefore they might give their life to Jesus. Yes. I think there is an element of being a good witness, but...
And it just really struck me, that is not Jesus's heart, that you love people on the condition that they will submit to him. And it just really kind of, I was kind of arrested, I was kind of taken by that. And it really made me reevaluate some of the friendships I've had, some of them that I have at the moment. I just thought, wow, it really, I think the thing it really made me realise is entering into friendships, it's a heavy thing because you don't want to love someone on a condition.
Yeah.
And there are different friendships, aren't there? So that's what we were talking about when we were discussing this. We were saying you have friendships for a season, you have some for the long haul. What I don't want for all of them, I don't want to be putting those conditions in place. And we do that sometimes. Like there'll be people that you work with, and it could be that you just work with them and things change.
And sometimes you have work friends.
Yeah.
And people, you're friends with at work, and it doesn't go much farther beyond that. Some people you keep in contact, some people you don't, some people you reinitiate contact with, and that's successful. And it's easy to put pressure on friendship, isn't it? I think, if it's true friendship, then X, Y, and Z. Yeah, as you say, friendships can take very different forms between different people, obviously, and in different times of life and that kind of stuff. So,
And I think
not
also
having so much pressure on them can be quite healthy, I think.
yeah, we don't want to have those kind of pressures, and I think sometimes we can love people or express friendship in different ways. So I guess it's ultimately that whole thing of love languages, that it could be that you show love for someone in one way and they show it to you in another, but because they're not showing it to you in the way you want, you don't necessarily feel that love as well. And that can make things tricky, can't it? One of the challenges I have is sometimes you can have friends who you genuinely love and genuinely love you, but they're not necessarily, they haven't got the ability to love you back. I think it could be because of circumstances or whatever, but actually the love is there, but it's a very one-way relationship where you may be giving out.
That can be challenging, can't it? But that's I suppose comes back to that love without expectation of return, the agape side of things, doesn't it? Where you are just kind of that person for the other person that might need that, or it might just be a valuable thing.
And there are times where I'm that person in a friendship who just takes all the time. I remember there was a time where, we had kids at the time, and as a family, we were going through a tough time. It was work related, but actually there was you guys and a few others who just stood with us, and for about a year, we just did nothing but take, and that was true friendship because nothing was asked of us. You just wanted to see us come to a place of having things sorted, really.
But it wasn't like we were waiting for that and then, okay, well, right, can you crack on with that now, please? 'Cause
It's our turn.
Yes, yeah, excuse me.
What do you think then about the necessity for friendships in God's kingdom then, Mike?
Interesting question.
An unplanned question as well.
So it can be easy to boil down, and I don't think this is good and right, but it can be easy to boil down friendships to kind of what you said earlier, right? I'm reaching out to someone, therefore I'm demonstrating love to them in order that they come to know Jesus. Or it's a friendship where there's a discipleship friendship where it's, and by that I mean some kind of, people would say, okay, discipleship is when you're training someone, and so you're training them in life, and you're expecting them to kind of emulate you maybe in some way, or you're hoping to kind of influence them to be a better person because you've got that wisdom or that ability to be able to do that somehow. If you kind of reduce it down to that, it becomes this one or other of those friendships or a mix of both, and so it's got that purpose, and so you've got a purpose in the relationship, and otherwise, what's the point? A thought there that's like, okay, do we have relationships need to have a purpose, otherwise what's the point? And we kind of don't need to continue with the relationship. It's got to have a purpose, otherwise that we don't do it, or not. Well, I would say not. I think similar to what you were saying there before about relationships and friendships, and in fact that it's just it exists because it is what it is, and it's something that maybe you might look at it and say, oh, this is God ordained, or it might be absolutely none of the above, but it's just we are friends and we care for each other, and that's enough. So that's one of the things I would say probably it isn't in the kingdom. It's got to have a purpose, and it's got to have these kind of criteria that it fulfills, otherwise it's not kingdom friendship. I think we can have friendship that is just friendship, and that's it. Now, within any kind of relationship with someone, you influence and affect each other, don't you? And you'd always think, okay, well, is this a positive thing or is it not? And in which case, okay, what is with this? If it's not a positive thing for both of us, or if there's having a negative effect on someone, then of course you would evaluate that and consider is this healthy or not? And I guess that doesn't happen too often, but it can happen, can't it? And so it's not one to just kind of ignore that as a consideration. But friendship in the kingdom, I think supporting each other, whatever that might look like. I think something I really value is if I'm off kilter in some way, if I'm being a bit weird about something, or I've got something a little bit off, for the person to feel comfortable to say, oh, really? Or offer an alternative viewpoint, or offer an alternative thought or action that might be like, well, have you considered this? Or, that viewpoint seems to not really line up with what you said before, which sounded good, or doesn't seem to line up with what the Bible would say, or doesn't seem to line up with what I understand it to be to follow Jesus. What do you think about that? So I find that helpful in relationships. But again, if that's not happening, it's no big deal.
I think that's a really interesting point you're making there, because that's a deliberate nature. And I think a lot of the time with friendships, well, with relationships in general, I think there's kind of the narrative that it should just happen, it should just click.
Yeah.
But actually, if you're really willing to challenge people and things like that, actually, there's a case of you're stepping out of the comfort zone. You're being deliberate with what you're doing.
Yeah, I think that can often be quite uncomfortable, can't it? So it's one of those things where you're like, right, I'm going to have to really press against what I would want to do in this moment to help out my friend by saying something they might not like. And I think that shows a lot of care for someone because it's a bit of a risk. Yeah, and of course there's ways of doing it and ways to kind of handle that to make that as helpful as it can be without unnecessary annoyance or whatever. And there's that element of risk for the other person or of the relationship on the basis that actually you're worth more than this to me. Like you're worth so much that actually I'm going to kind of butt up against what you're saying there a little bit. And actually I can think of people that don't share my faith that I'm friends with who are very good at that as well. And I might make a comment or whatever and they're like, what about, this or something, and that can be really, really good and interesting to consider and reflect on what those different viewpoints might be. Because it's easy to have friends who just would agree with you the whole time, isn't it? And okay, there's place for that, I think, probably as well in some ways. But yeah, those uncomfortable moments, do you get through those? How do you get through those? And
there's one of the things that really strikes me in the Bible is when you look at Jesus and the disciples, actually he's got like circles of closeness, where Peter, James and John were his closest. And I think we see that because they were at the Transfiguration with him. But like, even with that, I often think Jesus, well, he was, but Jesus must have been really lonely because like they're his 3 best friends out of 12. And they were falling asleep and stuff when he was telling them to pray.
you get the element, they don't quite get it.
They don't get it,
You get the kind of vibe, don't you? But
then,
I mean, you're talking about Jesus, so it's just fairly high bar there. Is he one of the disciples that says he was the most beloved?
John.
Is that John?
Yeah.
Some people say like he wrote that about himself as well. So do you
think he's being funny? Or...
I hope so.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah, it's like he says something like the one that he loved the most.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then there's a bit
Me,
in there,
by the way.
He talks about how he was faster than the other disciples as well, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's full of himself, isn't he? Those other jokers, I could run faster than them. I'm more. Jesus
I'm going to document this.
Yeah, I'm going to write it all down. So in 2,000 years, people are going to read about it and be like, "This John guy,
He was fast.
he was a legend in more ways than just being a disciple of Jesus."
And I guess, you know what? That's friendship, isn't it? They're kind of, we're presuming that they're just like bantering with each other.
I hope they took the mick out of him for it. I really hope they did.
Yeah.
You don't reckon they did?
I just don't know.
I can't imagine it.
I can imagine them having like rows over that.
Yeah. Well, there was that vibe as well, wasn't there, at points?
You said you were faster than me.
Yeah, how could you? You've written that down. I couldn't even write it in mine. Didn't know you were writing that.
And like before they were apostles, before the Holy Spirit, they were like always arguing with each other, weren't they? And bickering. I don't think you'd have described them as being friends then. They were, I guess they were kind of joined together by functionality.
Yeah. They were brothers, weren't there? There were a couple of brothers in there.
Yeah.
Who kind of, one brought the other.
Was that James and John?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the others were all kind of like, well, I'm going to drop what I'm doing and follow Jesus.
And I think with that, so like we can have friendships with people which are purely based on functionality. Like you could be serving in a similar area and you can get on with people really well and have a great time. But then sometimes when that function, that whatever you're doing is gone, that's when you really see how things are. And I think just because a friendship dies because of that doesn't mean it wasn't real.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's quite an interesting one.
Yeah, because there can be, when a friendship, I don't know, fizzles out or whatever, can be some hurt involved in that. And so it can feel a bit like, oh, well, that was never really anything of value then if it's gone now. But I think you're right. No, it was for that time, and that's great.
For seasons, yeah.
Yeah. So one of the things it says in the Bible is about loving others as Christ loves us. What does that mean? for you, Rich, do you think?
For me, I think it's freedom. I think that's something I've really been learning, because I think God's love brings freedom. So Christ loves us. He loves us passionately, and he wants us to follow him. And I think there can be that temptation that because he wants us to, when we love people, we love them and we push them his way, but actually he never forced anyone to follow him. He never forced anyone to do the right thing. And there's a phrase I heard that helping someone who doesn't want help isn't help, it's control. Yeah. And I think we need to love people enough that we can let them make bad decisions, do what they want to do. And that can be quite hard.
And in a church context, it's quite different to a lot of contexts, I suppose, because there's an element of common aim, and that, well, a lot of the purpose of the church is for us to enable each other to follow Jesus or to support each other doing that. So maybe in that setting, possibly that thing you're referring to there, that kind of element of where things edge into the control a little bit, or a lot, depending, can happen perhaps because it's kind of, well, this is what the Bible says and what Jesus says you should be doing, so therefore, well, if you're a Christian and you say you're a Christian, that's what you should be doing. And some people feel they have a remit to do that and say those kind of things. That's the kind of context that I guess you're referring to that in some ways. That can happen obviously anywhere in any way, can't it? But
I think it comes back to what you were saying earlier about how you have friends who will tell you those challenging truths. But I think if you choose to not hear them or not respond to them or not respond the way that they feel you should, how are they going to respond to you? Because I think that can be the challenge. It's like I've been in situations where I've been pushed to do what someone felt was right. And I think that wasn't God's heart, because they had what they thought were the best intentions for me. But Jesus gives people choice and gives them freedom. And I think it can be quite hard to just watch people making bad decisions. Yeah. And especially when there are consequences.
Yeah, and those consequences are not just for that person often, they're for multiple people, and that's far-reaching, isn't it? So temptation is right, let's put a stop to this so that the damage is limited here, there and everywhere, and not necessarily the right course of action. Yeah.
I was just having a quick look, and when I was talking about Jonathan and David, it looks like that's in 1 Samuel around chapter 16 onwards, if anybody wants to have a read.
There you go. That's your homework.
There you go.
We don't set homework on this podcast.
Next episode, I want you to have this done.
We're not giving anyone a... Could be any time.
Any
Could
time.
spring it on you any moment.
I don't know when it's going to be.
No.
So guys, I think that's us coming to the end. It would be great to hear your thoughts. So you can always drop us an email, info@richardandmike.com. You can comment on the episodes, contact us on Instagram. It's always nice to hear from people.
Definitely.
But from us, that's a goodbye.
Thanks for listening. Speak to you next time.
Thanks for listening. As ever, we'd love to hear your thoughts in the chat today. Please get in touch with us on our site at www.richardandmike.com, that's with an AND in the middle, by email at info@richardandmike.com, and on Instagram with @richardandmike. Thanks again, see you next time.